What's up, Mike Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of Rich Brian's third album, Where's My Head? This is the first full-length project from Brian since his second album, The Sailor, came out way back in 2019. And it's not that he has given us nothing in between those two records. There has been the two EPs, 1999, Bright Side, in 2022. But still, it's been a pretty long wait, all things considered. And this is coming at an interesting time for, I think, Rich Brian's career, just because with every subsequent release he's really put out, I guess ever since he changed his name and became a serious artist, he's become a more well-rounded artist with every release. Rich Brian's third album, Where's My Head, is arguably his most experimental and wide-ranging album to date. Brian has retained his core rapping ability, its very dry delivery that he's had for some time, but he continues to experiment with all kinds of other genres, laying down some singing, making more R&B leaning and melodic stuff. There's quite the range he's given us over the last, 6 years or so. And Where's My Head, I think, is the best example of all that, kind of working pretty well for the most part. And it's hard not to see the Tyler, the Creator inspiration in terms of Brian's artistry, in terms of his use of multiple voices and vocal inflections and things like that. The persona he has on the mic. Well, I wouldn't call Brian a super impressive lyrical artist. I do think some of his best lyricism is present on this new album, and his storytelling ability is continuing to improve. At the end of the day, I think my favorite Brian stuff is probably where most of his fans originally came from way back in the day, which is just him rapping hard, ever since the days of Dat Stick. When he does stuff like that, I think back to the Bright Side EP from 3 years ago, songs like New Tooth, songs like Get Your Mans. When he goes as hard as he possibly can, I really enjoy his stuff. And he does that a few times on Where's My Head, enough for me. And then there's a lot of other stuff that is probably of, up and down effectiveness, but it certainly is an interesting record. And I think we've said this a lot. Everyone's kind of said this a lot. It's an old take at this point, but you never would have expected the guy who made Dat Stick when he was still living at home in Indonesia and, on YouTube and stuff like that. You wouldn't have thought that guy would become as well-rounded of a musical artist as Rich Brian has. And there's something to be said for that. I think 88 Rising deserves plenty of credit as well as continuing to be a effective and welcoming, incubator of the talent that they do have, as the roster has really grown in terms of stature, in terms of acclaim and fame and whatnot. And Brian is another great success story for that label. The first song, Senja, I think the piano really stands out. You have Brian's rapping over this scratching of strings. I think his flow switch up in the middle sounds really nice. Body High, right away you get a bit of a new vibe again from Brian. This is featuring Toro y Moi, where you have this kind of indie pop leaning sound straight up. Brian doing plenty of singing. I think the rap verse is solid, but it's definitely a song that's intending to have crossover appeal. The next song, Jumpy, featuring Ski Mask, the Slump God. That bass is thumping, kind of like a classic Brian rap flow. Really tight rhyming, but he also has a really dry delivery, as he's kind of become famous for. I love the way Ski Mask has that acapella start to his verse before the bass drops. The Hank Hill propane bar really made me chuckle. It's a fun Brian banger. He's done songs like these before. Took a Breath. I think that kick drum is really propulsive. I think the singing is honestly really good on this one. You have the multiple voices from Brian. The second verse gets deeper. This is very Tyler straight up, but I think it's working well. It's a nice homage, I guess you could say. Fat Cat Starving Dogs, another song where Brian's spitting again, featuring Maxo Cream, Houston's Finest, multiple voices from Brian once again. It's fun. One of the advanced singles from this album, Little Ray of Light, another vibe shift again. You have these violins and this orchestral flair with the outro. Different for sure. Ma, you have Brian once again downshifting with his delivery. I like the way the song picks back up though. Fun progression overall in the song. Serpents, one of the highlights of the album for sure, has this glitchy loop. The energy of the song, I feel like the mix might be a bit off. I thought Brian was a bit too soft with this beat, but I think his second verse, the flow is awesome. He's really bouncing on the track. It's a highlight nonetheless. Bumpy Road, on this song, Brian actually acknowledges the weight between all his new music. He had the Red Veil feature. I've never really been a big Red Veil guy. He sounds fine. Time Zones, though. This one is quite the highlight. I think this is Brian showing a new side of his writing, where this is like a 6.5 minute song, just kind of a simple drum tempo. And Brian's very reflective about, his past, his first love, and his relationship with his brother. And there's a lot to it. I think it's really some of the richest storytelling Brian's given you. And it's because the song's so long, he really gets into a lot with that track. I think it's really impressive just because it's something Brian hasn't really done before. Is it another highlight for me? I think the Charlotte Day Wilson feature, the R&B singer, very striking voice, really nice contrast with Brian on that track. I think She is just fine. I think the instrumentation sounds nice, but nothing special to me. Oh Well, very groovy vibe. And then lastly, the closer, Jelly Air Island, very introspective from Brian once again, really trying to grapple with where he's been and what he's done. And yeah, like, does this have songs as I reach the heights of some of my favorite Brian songs? I think of like when he really dabbled into like melodic stuff with like 100 Degrees on the Sale or Love in My Pocket on 1999. Does it have my favorite rap bangers of his, pure rap bangers of his, a la New Tooth, a la Get Your Mans? No. But it's close to a lot of those songs in many respects. And I think because it's a more well-rounded overall like project statement, album statement, it's certainly pretty commendable work. I'm a big fan of Brian. I am hoping to finally get to see him perform live following this drop. I'm sure he's going to announce a tour soon. The last 2 times he's gone on tour, I've always been on vacation and away when he was coming to town. So I'm really hoping that is not the case once again. We'll see. And if I do get to see him, I'll do a concert review. So make sure you come back for that. And for more rap reviews and more music reviews, subscribe. And I'll see you next time.